All right, episode 4 of the BG show. My name is Bryce Gelman. Today, we have our first ever Jets-centric episode. And our special guest that will be joining us is none other than Jake Asman of the Jake Asman Show on YouTube and of 98.7 ESPN New York. We're going to be talking about Jets, Chargers, and just Jets in general this year. So without further ado, let's bring Jake on. Jake, what's going on, man? Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Bryce. Thanks for having me.
So, Jake, you are, one of the top Jets content creators and one of the biggest Jets fans that I know. The Jets currently sit at 4-3 right now, and honestly, that's a win. Like that's a huge plus. I don't think anyone really expected that after Aaron Rodgers went down in Week 1. How would you rate this season thus far?
It's been crazy. From a big picture perspective, they're 4-3. And on one hand, you said it, that no one expected that. They started 1-3. It looked like after that Patriot game in Week 3, this was headed towards, a 4 or 5 win season because Zach Wilson was that bad. And, even though they lost that Chiefs game, the fact that Zach played really well in that game, I think kind of inspired the rest of the team that, hey, all is not lost. And give this team a lot of credit, for getting back to 500, winning the next 2 against Denver, that huge upset over the Eagles. And it was the ugliest game I think I've ever seen the Jets play and actually win. But you know what? You don't apologize for it. You take the win because I've seen the Jets always lose that game. They gave New England a game, so now the Giants gave the Jets a game, and it kind of evens itself out. So to be 4-3 with the next couple games being the Chargers, a winnable game at home, a winnable game, in Vegas against a rookie quarterback, and a new coach now in Antonio Pierce. You feel pretty good about where the Jets are, just given the context of you lost your Hall of Fame quarterback. The entire season was built around on the opening drive of the season. So from that standpoint, it's crazy. But then there's also part of you going, man, everything we felt about this Jets team has been true. They were a quarterback away. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy right now, Bryce, I can make a case the Jets are certainly 5-2, and dare I say 6-1. We're talking about them. Yeah, we're talking about them like maybe they're the best team in the AFC. So it's bittersweet from that standpoint. But I'd rather this where you have a season, you have a chance to make the playoffs. You give this fan base, which is starving for anything, something. So it is what it is. But to be 4-3 is certainly a great spot given the context.
Yeah, it's a really crazy thing to think right now that the Jets have kept this season afloat, and not only kept the season afloat, you're over 500, which is a huge plus, I think, in anyone's books, and obviously in the minds of a Jets fan like yourself, who's been starved for any sort of winning. So I think it all comes back to the guy that you have under center, and that guy is Zach Wilson, someone that I think every Jets fan had written off completely going into the season, not expecting him to play at all. He gets thrust into the spotlight just like he was the first 2 years of his career. In his third year, he's looked, a little shaky at times, but last week he put together a 24-second drive that tied the game and ended up winning the game. So how do you view Zach Wilson's year thus far? Have you seen any progress?
He's definitely better. Like it's wild to talk about Zach because saying he's improved does not really mean a whole lot from like the standpoint of like, oh, he's a franchise quarterback now. Like he was unplayable at the end of last year. Like forget just being like the worst starter in the league. Like you could make a compelling argument. He was not even playing like a backup should be playing. Like the Jets, to put it in perspective, Bryce, in a game that meant nothing last season, last game of the year against the Dolphins, they were already eliminated. They chose to put Joe Flacco out there over Zach Wilson because Zach was just shot. He had no confidence. He had the yips. The locker room was revolting with how bad he was playing in that press conference after the Patriots debacle. Like he was in a bad spot. So on one hand, I give the Jets coaching staff and Zach credit. Like they have made him at least a viable backup. Like he's gonna have a career in this league. Like there was some doubt going into that Chiefs game. Is Zach Wilson going to be in the league a year from now? Like he was playing that poorly. So on one hand, he's definitely better. Like he no longer like dirts balls. He no longer goes out there and has the yips. He still makes boneheaded decisions. He still takes sacks on fourth down that drive you crazy. But to his credit, they don't win that game a year ago with Zach against the Giants. Like, yes, the Giants handed the Jets the win. There's no doubt. But a year ago, Zach Wilson's not able to win that game with 24 seconds left and get that game to overtime and then make the plays in overtime. Like that 3rd and 10 throw to Garrett Wilson in overtime was phenomenal with him facing pressure in his face and standing in there. So what's frustrating about Zach is he's gotten better, but he's still probably a bottom 3 starter right now in the league, and he's got to get to around.
Really? You think he's that bad?
You think he's that? Give me some guys you think he's better than.
I guess. There are It's just hard to view it as that, because the Jets roster is so good. It's so well constructed outside of him. I mean, what if you put him in San Fran system? Do you think that they're as good? I think he might be as good as Purdy. I think Purdy has been completely exploited and exposed these past few weeks. I think he was in MVP conversations. He has not played that well. They lost those 2 games in a row. So, I mean, you could look at him as a system quarterback, but, he is 4-3. So you got to give the guy, some flowers here.
Yeah,
You
look,
got it.
I'm trying, Bryce. It's hard, man. Like he's got 5 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions on the year. He's like near the bottom in QBR. His completion percentage is, up and down by the game. I mean, if they didn't have that comeback, if Graham Gano hits that chip shot field goal, the Jets are losing that game. And the conversation in New York all week is how bad Zach Wilson is and how did they not add a quarterback by the deadline? Josh Dobbs goes for a 6th. How do you not bring that guy in? I want to root for Zach Wilson. I like him personally. I think he's a good kid. I think he works hard. It's just I got to call it how it is. Like he's wildly inconsistent. The only thing he's consistent at is being inconsistent. He'll give you good moments, there's no doubt, that are tantalizing, but I still think he's near the bottom in the league as far as being a starter, which, by the way, is still progress because he was the worst backup in the league a year ago. He was unplayable, and at least now, there's legitimate conversation about, hey, maybe it's trending up. They are 4-3. Maybe they could get better and he could continue to show growth. But until I see him put together like a full game again, like he did against the Chiefs, I can't just sit here and be like, well, they're 4-3. That must mean he's good. Like the Jets defense is otherworldly. Like they're asked to do things no team in the league is asked to do. Like if they don't play at their best, they can't win. They're one bad game this year. They got blown out against the Cowboys because the offense is incapable of leading this team. Like if the Jets defense has an off game, they can't win. No other defense in the league is in that spot where, if they play bad, they have no chance. And that, in large part, is because Zach Wilson is wildly inconsistent.
And I'd argue that you take Zach Wilson at the start of the year, and he doesn't, even with everything the Giants gave him last week, he still doesn't win the game. He doesn't make those 2 solid throws to Garrett Wilson and then Lazard, and then he doesn't spike the ball in time. You could argue that he'd wait too long, wouldn't spike it, the game would end, and then you'd hear every single member of New York sports media absolutely clowning the guy, and he didn't. He took what was given to him. He won the game, and I think that's a big step in his confidence because, in a post-game press conference, he did seem a little too overconfident as a Giants fan. I think Saleh and Wilson both came out there like on top of the world. You just beat a team, the Giants, that had Tommy DeVito at quarterback. So I think take a step back. I just think that could definitely be a confidence builder going forward for Wilson, even though the game was handed to you guys, as you had mentioned. So there have been a lot of guys that have taken a step, especially on defense for the Jets this year, and one of them being Quincy Williams, who was the AFC Defensive Player of the Week this past week. Who is your MVP of the season thus far?
Well, just to correct you, because it's a big deal. Quincy Williams was the Defensive Player of the Month, right? Not even of the week. That's wow.
There you go. Yeah, I thought it was just a week.
No, the month. I mean, he's won. I think he's won either 1 or 2 Defensive Player of the Week so far. But he was the Defensive Player of the Month. Ironically enough, I'm pretty sure his brother Quinnen won Defensive Player of the Month last October. So for the second year in a row, a Williams brother is winning that award, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I'll say this. I think Quincy's been their MVP. I really do. I mean, on a team, think about this for a second. On a team with 2 first-team All-Pros on defense a year ago, and Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, and a second-team All-Pro in C.J. Mosley, the Jets' best defensive player this year has either been Quincy Williams, who was a waiver wire pickup by Joe Douglas 2 seasons ago, or Bryce Huff, who was an undrafted free agent in 2020 and has blossomed into one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Like, you pick make your pick. Either one of those guys. I'm going Quincy. Have been the MVPs of the Jets and have been the biggest reason why this defense is, to me, the best defense in the league, given what they're asked to do every week.
So last week, and you've mentioned Quinnen got completely outplayed by Dexter Lawrence. I know it was largely in the stat sheet, but Dexter Lawrence completely outplayed him. So this year, Quinnen Williams, again, he's still a big impact guy. He's still one of the top defensive linemen of the week. Do you in the league, do you think that there's any cause for concern with Quinnen after last week's performance?
No, I'm not going to say there's concern. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is a great player. He's having a great year. I think it's worth noting though the Jets were on their fourth string center for a lot of that game. And Dexter Lawrence got a chance to just basically go up against guys who let's call it for
Good
what it
point.
is, should not have been out there for the Jets. I mean, if they didn't have two centers get hurt in the middle of this game, it completely changes the conversation. So I think Dexter Lawrence is a phenomenal player. I think Quinnen's been good. He has not obviously been as good as he was last year to this point. He still, though, is top 5 at his position in pressures. He doesn't have the sack number that he had at this time last year. I think he only has like a half sack, but he's been very good still. So I'm not concerned. Obviously, no one's talking about it because the defense still remains one of the best in the league, and his brother's been great. So I think Quinnen has kind of gotten a pass a little bit from Jet fans for having for him a down season compared to last year. But I'm not worried about him. He's still a team captain. The guys love him in that room. Salah swears by him. So I don't think I'm worried about Quinnen at all.
So you mentioned Salah, and a lot has been made since his hiring about, his coaching decisions, his presence in the locker room, and, the chance that he gets fired. And there's been a lot of conversation about that. How do you view Salah's job this year with the 4-3 Jets team losing Aaron Rodgers in the first week?
I mean, he's doing a great job. How can he not be doing a great job? He didn't pick Zach Wilson. I mean, it's his third year in a row. Zach Wilson is his quarterback. He was supposed to have Aaron Rodgers. I think you and I agreed the Jets would be 6-1 or 5-2 right now if they had Rodgers. They're 4-3. Yeah. They started 3-3. A lot of people said, "Oh, it's okay if they start 3-3 with Aaron Rodgers." I think Robert Saleh is doing a great job. Not a good job, a great job, given the context of what the season is supposed to be. They have an unbelievable defense. Bryce, can you remember a Jets team that has had this kind of player development over the last couple of years? John Franklin Myers, waiver
Good
claim.
point.
Quincy Williams, waiver claim. Bryce Huff, undrafted free agent. DJ Reed was a nice player in Seattle. He's now a Pro Bowl corner for this team. Tony Adams won them the Eagles game. Undrafted free agent. I can keep going. The leap that Jermaine Johnson has taken from year 1 to year 2. I mean, if this team had average quarterback play, they'd have at least one more win. And if they had Aaron Rodgers right now, we'd be talking about the Jets as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. This team never quits on Salah. They play their asses off. They go out there and they have completely changed the culture in that locker room. Guys wanted to actually play for the Jets. Rodgers looked at this team and wanted to play for Robert Saleh and play for this organization. That matters, man. I think Saleh's a very good coach. And I think once he finally gets a real quarterback, we're going to see that.
So you mentioned all those guys. All those guys are on the defensive side of the ball. So offensively, you'd like to see, an Allen Lazard take a step up. It's hard to do that when your quarterback is Zach Wilson. Do you think that the reason why most of these guys have gotten better on defense and haven't been on offense because Zach Wilson is the one under center?
I mean, he's a backup quarterback, right? I know he was the second pick in the draft, but there's plenty of guys like Mitch Trubisky was the second pick in the draft. Like he's not any good. Like they missed on Zach. I mean, that's what it all comes down to. Like he was not supposed to play every game this season, and I hope he doesn't play every game this season because that means Aaron Rodgers could defy the odds and actually somehow make it back. Yeah, I mean, look, this offense does have some good players on it, right? I mean, but they're also decimated by injuries up front on the offensive line. But Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Rucker, like they have good players on this football team, certainly good enough to be able to score more than just one offensive touchdown a game, which is what they're averaging right now. So, I don't know how much we could blame Saleh for that. He's a defensive-minded guy. His defense is unbelievable. The guys play hard for him. They don't quit. Like, that's what a coach is supposed to do. He hired Hackett, who's an experienced offensive coordinator, and he thought he was going to have Aaron Rodgers. So I don't really understand Saleh's not a good coach. Saleh is not a good coach. He's doing a great job this season. And once again, if he didn't have to play with his backup quarterback the entire year, we would be having the conversation right now on your show about, hey, could the Jets actually win a championship this year? So it drives me nuts when anytime it's like the Jets lose a game and the fan base is like, fire Saleh. Why? So you could start all over again? Really? Like they have a good GM. He's not perfect, but they have a good GM. And I think they have a good coach. Let these guys grow together and continue to build up this team when Rodgers comes back next season.
So I think there were a lot of different instances this year. As you mentioned, the Jets fans have been calling for his head since the start of the year. It's not his fault that his star quarterback got hurt in the first week, but there have been some games, like the Patriots game was just a joke. Like you can't lose to them again. They haven't beaten them since 2015. So I think that's one of his big blemishes.
Well,
yeah, I mean it's hard when you don't have a quarterback that.
They give up 13
It's hard.
points
It is. It's not his fault. It's not his fault.
Of course. Look,
it's not his fault.
Bryce, I'm not going to tell you who's Vince Lombardi, but when I like watch that Patriot game, you go back and watch the all 22, and there are guys running wide open, and Zach was so petrified of Belichick and turning it over, he was afraid to take any shots downfield until the one drive when they got down 2 scores. All of a sudden, Zach is like, "Well, now I have to throw. I have no choice." That one great
Yeah.
touchdown drive he had, where he's 7 of 7, they go down, and they score a touchdown. Like that's it, man. Like I don't want to just completely say it's all Zach Wilson. There's nothing to do with players around him or coaching. But I'm sorry. If you objectively watch the Jets like I have, and I've watched every snap of Wilson's career, I've watched every game of Salah's career, I can't sit here and say that Salah's not a good coach given the context of they had Aaron Rodgers and they lost him on the opening drive of the year. They have wins over the Bills. They should have beaten the Chiefs. They have a win over the Eagles, and they're sitting here at 4-3 when everyone thought the season was over, the 4th play of the season. So it drives me nuts that some Jet fans want to see another guy fired when it's like, are you nuts? Are you out of control? I think most are rational about this, but the Salah haters drive me crazy.
All right, Jake, let's get into game preview. Jets, Chargers, Monday Night Football, home game, raucous crowd expected for the Jets here against 3-4 Chargers team that should be a little bit better. The Chargers have the second worst defense in terms of yards allowed. How could the Jets offense exploit this?
Well, yards allowed, they're second worst, and they're 32nd in passing yards allowed. So if they could just buy Zach Wilson some time and say, Zach, play like the Chiefs game. Like, don't be afraid to air it out. Like, you're going to need to score points against this team. Like, with all due respect to your Giants, Bryce, Justin Herbert's a little better than Tommy DeVito. So you're going to need to score some points in this game if you're going to have a chance on Monday night. So they got to air it out. Look, I'm not saying you have Zach throw 30 times in this game, but throw on first down, play action. If Garrett Wilson doesn't get 10-plus targets on Monday night, I'm going to lose my mind. So you have to go out there and you have to take chances downfield. They have, to me, 3 legitimate tight ends that all could be a factor in the passing attack in Conklin, Ruckert, and Uzama. Get them involved. Like, look, Zach might throw a pick or two. That's okay. I'd rather him take chances downfield than whatever we saw in this Giants game or that Patriot game we referenced earlier in this conversation. So I think it's a big Garrett Wilson game. I think you get Breece Hall involved as both a receiver. He's been their second leading receiver the last 2 games. And I think you go out there and you don't play afraid. You trust your defense, and you go out there, you force some turnovers against Herbert, who is very good, but I think a little overrated. And I think the Jets have a significant coaching advantage in this one. I think Brandon Staley's a joke. He's a defensive-minded guy. His defense is terrible. Robert Saleh, defensive-minded guy, might have the best defense in the league. So there you go. So it's not an easy game. It's the Jets. They could play well against anyone. They could play horrible against anyone, as they've proven. But I think it's a good matchup at home. Chargers coming in off a win. They got to go cross country now. MetLife's going to be nuts with only Jet fans because Chargers fans are not making that trip, or they might not even exist.
There aren't any Chargers fans. They don't exist.
So I'm expecting a much better performance by the Jets, and I think they got a great chance to win. I really feel that way.
So this defense, I mean, we've been talking about this entire episode. This defense is one of the best in the league. Could make the argument for top 2, top 3. Justin Herbert's coming off one of his best games of the year against the Bears. How could the defense get after Herbert, and how do they take control of this game?
So Justin Herbert, I saw a great stat that Rich Samini mentioned, covers the Jets for ESPN on his podcast, that Justin Herbert is awful when he's not blitzed, but he's excellent. He's like a top 3 quarterback in the league this year when he is blitzed. I think the great thing about the Jets is they blitz the least amount in the league, yet have the most pressures in the league, which is a testament to how good their defensive line is. So from that standpoint, I think it's a really good matchup that they can get home with 4 rushers, and they don't have to go out there and blitz Herbert where he excels in that spot. So I think if they go out there and they put pressure on him without having to blitz, it's a favorable matchup to maybe force some turnovers like they did against Allen, Mahomes, and Hurts earlier this season.
Well, they take advantage of the top quarterbacks in the league, and this is another top quarterback in the league. The Jets have made these top quarterbacks look silly. It's the craziest thing to me that they play their best against the best talent in the league, and this is just an extension of that. So let's get into game pick and score. I'll let you take this one first. Who do you got? Why? And what's the score?
Yeah, I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be probably, low scoring. It's a typical game of kind of how the Jets have handled things. I think it's going to probably be 23-20, or it could easily be 17, 14. Like, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Zach Wilson going out there and, all of a sudden, dominating even against a bad defense. I think he'll play better, but it could be a grinded out type of game. Jet games always come down to the wire this year. Win or lose, it's going to be wild at the end. So I'm going to say, I'll give you, let me try and finalize the score here. I'll say Jets 20, Chargers 17, and it comes down to the wire, and it's a game-winning kick by none other than Greg Zuerlein.
So I agree with you. I think the Jets are going to pull this one out. I think the Jets are actually going to have a solid offensive game. I think Zach Wilson is going to do what Zach Wilson does. And as you said, he's inconsistent. He had a terrible game against the Giants. He's going to come out and pick apart this Chargers defense. I can't believe I'm saying that. But I think that the Jets win this game 27-17. I think that they cement themselves as one of the top teams in the AFC, and they prove all the naysayers wrong. They prove the doubters wrong. They get this huge AFC win, and they put themselves in the best possible position, 8 games in that no one really expected. We've talked about it. The Jets had no chance once Rodgers goes down on that fourth play. And to sit at 4-3, potentially 5-3, I think they're going to win this game. And I think they're going to go to the playoffs. Hopefully Rodgers comes back, and hopefully you guys have something to be happy about, because it's been way too long, and I feel awful for all of you guys. So,
yeah,
he's looking up for the Jets, man.
They might. I mean, look, they win this game. All of a sudden, you get to 5-3. You play the Raiders next week. You actually could be 6-3 going into a huge back-to-back in Buffalo, where you play well against the Bills all the time, and then home against the Dolphins on Black Friday. And to this point, Miami's never proven they could beat a good team yet. We'll see how they do against the Chiefs Sunday out in Germany. But to your point, if the Jets score 27 points, they're definitely going to win that game. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. I hope you're right, and they could get that 27-point mark. That'd be nuts.
All right, Jake. Really, really appreciate your time. You can check Jake out on the Jake Asman Show on his YouTube. You can check him out. What's your Twitter handle?
It's
X
just
handle.
my name. Yeah, yeah, that's right. X. It's very
at Jake Asman.
Yes, sir.
Jake Asman. Got it. Thank you so much for joining me, man. Go Jets. Hopefully you guys can pick up a win this Monday against the Chargers. Jake Asman, everyone. Thank you, Jake.
Bryce, thanks for having me, man. Continued success on your end.